We try again. Welcome to Calvary Church. Good to see you today. This is our priest and rabbi walk into a classroom session. Rabbi Bisno is out of town this week, so I called our friend Jeff Myers, and he said, yes, I'd be delighted to come. He's just been in Los Angeles. He's got some knee issues, particularly when it turns cold. I'm pretty much there myself, so he will sit. But Jeff, first, he and I met just over 4 years ago, or right at 4 years ago, when they decided and were in discernment as Tree of Life to come here to Calvary Church and have been able to spend a lot of time together. It's fascinating to know someone personally who's also known as, he's a very humble guy, but if you're called America's rabbi over and over, that's another thing to live with. And I've been with him to speak to the state senate in Harrisburg and talk about, he's good at giving mic drop lines when he goes places. So at the Senate, the basic message was, if Jews and Episcopalians in Pittsburgh can get along, why can't Republicans and Democrats in Harrisburg get along? God bless you. It's like, I don't want to follow that and pray. Okay, thank you. But it's that way everywhere. And so anytime there's been a shooting or an anti-Semitic event, Jeff is usually the one that's called to offer a comment about that. He's also our good friend of mine and Calvary's just down the road at Tree of Life. They're currently worshiping chorus at Rodef. But please welcome our good friend Jeff Myers to Calvary.
Thank you. Thank you, Rector Jensen, for your kind introduction. Always a pleasure to be back here in our second home, Calvary Episcopal Church, which we don't think of as something temporary because with God's good graces, one day, Tree of Life soon enough will reopen. That will not end our warm relationship with Calvary. It'll only grow it even more. So when Rector suggested anti-Semitism, oh joy, my favorite subject. But before, I just thought I would just make note with sadness, another mass shooting in the United States. This time in Colorado, overnight at a, ostensibly, if I understand right, an LGBTQ plus bar of some sort, and a number of people were killed. It's already been labeled, as you know, I don't use the word hate, I say H, an H crime. If the reckoning is right, there have been over 700 mass shootings in the United States. That's roughly 2 a day. That's the one thing I would think that in the United States we should not be proud of. But enough said, may the victims be under God's protective care. May God also help the families and all those who suffer at this time. So let me tell you a little about growing up. What does it mean to grow up with anti-Semitism? I went to public school as a child, and kids would regularly toss pennies at me. Why? Because they say Jews are cheap, and we even pick up pennies, so go pick up your pennies. I'd get into fights regularly. At that time, I was rather runty. When I was a bar mitzvah, age of 13, I think I was shorter than my mother. My mother's 5'2". So I was short and I was skinny. That's an easy target. Make it even easier because you're Jewish. So regularly got into fights. The moment for me was coming home from school one day, lived 2 blocks away from the public school. Approached the driveway. There in the driveway, in chalk, were swastikas with the words, "Jeffrey's a dirty Jew." That was my introduction to Holocaust studies. I say my introduction because in those days, Holocaust studies were barely in their infancy. It was not taught, even in Jewish schools. It just wasn't spoken about. We could not join the swim club in the town we lived in because they didn't allow Jews into the swim club. My father was the judge in the town. It wasn't illegal. We couldn't join. So what did the Jewish community do in surrounding areas? We started our own swim club, but our swim club welcomed everyone. One day, some future date, the swim club in that community extended membership to my father. I was so proud of my father. He told them what they could do with their membership application. So growing up in America, I thought that's the price of admission a Jew has to pay to live in America, is to put up with anti-Semitism. Then came October 27th, when I said, no, there is no price of admission to pay for living in America. There should be no price of admission for any person to pay to live in the United States. Because if there is one like that, then America has failed. Not failing, failed. As a country, the experiment didn't work. But yet that is the America that we live in. America has never welcomed immigrants, ever. Look at the histories. No matter who the group is, they've never been welcomed here. Many of you may remember when JFK was running for president, the anti-Catholic sentiment in the United States. Racism against people of color has always existed in the United States. How many people are afraid of the other, people who immigrate here? That's what the shooting was about at Tree of Life. An individual who thought that HIAS, the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, was promoting too much of a welcoming spirit for people to immigrate here, without thinking for a moment that unless you are Native American, and we won't go down that path of genocide, everyone in this country is of immigrant stock. Everyone. That means most likely the alleged shooter at Tree of Life, his family was probably an immigrant family. They may even have been helped by HIAS to get into this country. So how can you say you love America, yet you totally dislike 60% or more of the people who live here? I can't figure out the math. But that's the America that we face. That's the challenge for the good people of America, to say, no, this is not the America we want. The problem is the silent majority doesn't speak up. And when the silent majority doesn't speak up, a shooting in a synagogue occurs. A shooting in a gay bar last night occurs. That's what happens when we're silent about it. We're beyond the point to be silent about these things. I cannot tell you how many congregants and Jews from not in the Pittsburgh area reached out to me over recent months, afraid to go to their house of worship because of the rash of anti-Semitic statements that have been made. What does that say about America when that's occurring? That anyone can be free to say whatever they want, no matter the consequence. Is there a red line in the First Amendment? If you can't yell fire in a movie theater, at what point does free speech end and move from just being freedom of speech to freedom to attack and harm others? So my mantra has been, the more anti-Semitism they do, we do more Jewish. Which then raised the question that the rector and I were talking about. Okay, he understands the idea of doing more Jewish. What can you do to do more Christian? What does that mean, to do more Christian? Is that a good thing? Does that make America better? So that, I think, really is the big question before us today. What would it mean to you to do more Christian, to make America an even better place, that it may one day begin to approach the ideals that the founders put down on paper in the Declaration of Independence? I think that's the challenge before us. Because until that day occurs, the people in my synagogue are afraid to go worship. Shame on America. Because the statement that is being made is, Jews are not welcome. I cannot tell you how many people have nightmares from Charlottesville when people with torches are saying Jews will not replace us. I never thought that could happen in my home. Never, ever thought that could happen in my home. That's what it means to be Jewish today, to be afraid to go to worship in your synagogue, to be afraid to put a menorah in your window for Hanukkah, to be afraid to walk around town with a yarmulke. There's a shop owner who had approached me December of 2018 and mentioned to me that every year decorations and displays would be put up around the shop to celebrate all the winter holidays, of which there are many. There are, I think, 14 winter holidays in the United States. We might just only know of 2, but there's 14. And this shop owner would try to put up many, and I won't mention the shop owner's name to protect the guilty. And the shop owner said, this year, I'm not putting up Hanukkah decorations. And I asked, why? He said, after the shooting at Tree of Life, I'm afraid for the safety of my employees. I said, I understand that, and I can appreciate that you're concerned about the safety of your employees. But by not putting up Hanukkah decorations, you're letting the domestic terrorists win. They've inflicted terror, and they won. Will you let them win? Where's the balance? So the question I want to raise before you is, so what does it mean to do more Christian to you, to make America the land of the free, the home of the brave, a place where life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is equally available to all, as opposed to some, and I mentioned this in a sermon, I think 2 weeks ago. It doesn't say in the Declaration of Independence, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, comma, except for the Jews. There's no qualifier. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, because why? That's given to us by our Creator, as it's acknowledged in the Declaration of Independence. So I'm going to make it more of a question to you.
Let me ask, to help everybody with that, what you've been talking about, to do more Jewish, what does that look like? How does that manifest in the community?
That's a great question. It doesn't merely mean going to synagogue services. That's just one element of it. We're commanded by God to perform certain behaviors on a regular daily basis. In Hebrew, we call a commandment a mitzvah. I think many of you might be familiar with that term. So the things that God commands us to do, or the thing God commands us not to do, are called a mitzvah. So when you're told, you shall not murder, that's a commandment. That means it's a mitzvah. So you don't murder. Love your neighbor as yourself. We're commanded to do that in the book of Leviticus. So we do that even more. To remember and take care of the poor, the stranger, the orphan, and the widow, to be even more engaged in communal activities to help those in need. And not just because it's Thanksgiving. We're commanded to do that every single day. There is no one day where you do more of it than any other day. Every day we're commanded to do those things. So the acts that God expects of us to perform, as written down in the 5 books of Moses, the Torah, we do even more of them on a regular basis. So whatever level you're at, that's wonderful. Now, kick it up one step more and do even more. And it's not just about money. It's about the most valuable commodity that we all possess at this time. Time. To devote more time. Volunteering in a food pantry. Helping to drive people somewhere. This week I know we have Thanksgiving to-go meals for the elderly and those people in need. And we have people who are driving and delivering those this week so that anyone who would like to can get one, no charge. What are the things that you can do to up your game even more is what it means to do more Jewish.
But that's the same thing as being more Christian. There's a difference in what you're saying and what we should be doing. You know, it's immaterial whether you're Jewish or Episcopalian. Obeying those same things you said, it's our obligation just as well. My hang-up is with the Christians that aren't Christians. You know, there are those that love others. We're a welcoming community here, all colors, creeds, all the colors, if you will, of the rainbow. And then we have somebody down the street that's preaching, I don't want to use a label, but they're preaching a very narrow-minded version of Christianity that in my mind is not being a Christian at all, because they're not welcoming people that are different. Sorry.
No, don't apologize. This is an open conversation. Thank you for sharing.
I can tell you what we at Calvary have been focused on. I'll speak mostly for myself, but I have a pretty good idea of what people do here and how time goes. I take your point, very well taken, Tom, but I'm less focused on those people that are different than we are or going after negative things. You say the rise of Christian nationalism, that was like, what's your point on that? That's fine. I'm not worried. That's not my energy. The other ways Christians act that are very different than what we do, that's their business. But we are trying to embody, to incarnate, to live into a generous, faithful way of being Christians that Calvary's been doing for well over 100 years. And one of the things that we did was to write the letter and initially invite Tree of Life to say, our home is your home. Now, that was just a way of us reaching out that has begun a relationship, and I never imagined all that would happen. But small things like the Christmas Berry Project we do, I'm focusing us on the positive ways that we inhabit being a Christian, rather than worrying about what other people are doing. I'm sure every Jew agrees in the world, right? Yes.
For sure, yeah.
All the time about it, and they all agree with you, I assume. How about your wife? We'll I always start at home. But not every Jew agrees on what it means to follow the commandments, because there are different ways one might do that, or how we live into it. But we've carved out this way, which is a way of traditional worship. It's focusing on classes like this, of studying the scriptures and prayer life, and it's also outwardly focused of serving our neighbors. So the question asked is, who is our neighbor? That's why this relationship initially began, because we recognize Tree of Life community as our neighbors in a literal sense. I mean, we're less than a mile on Shady Avenue, and then a metaphorical, biblical sense, because we're commanded to love God and to love our neighbors. There's part of the way that we're doing that.
And I think it's a model, not just for the community in the world. I can't tell you how many times people are amazed at how the Pittsburgh community responded as a community in the wake of October 27th. The outreach that came from all places, all peoples, faith, color, sexual orientation, that didn't matter. And as I've remarked regularly, I'm an immigrant. I'm from New York. So, many people said, "All right, you're already a Yinzer. What you went through, you're a Yinzer." Okay, that I don't know if the response of Pittsburgh could have been duplicated in any other city in the United States, because that's something that's just unique about Pittsburgh. That no matter who the group was, the answer was there, tell us what you need. I cannot tell you how many houses of worship reached out to us What do you need? We'll offer you space. How many groups offered comfort, food, anything that was needed, which I think is a uniquely Pittsburgh thing? It's beautiful, but here's the catch. Why does it take tragedy to behave in that way? Shouldn't doing more Jewish, doing more Christian, doing more Muslim, doing more Sikh, whatever it is, be the regular course of events every single day? I don't think it's a negative about any one particular faith. Maybe it's something of human nature. Although it's wonderful when people do reach out when people have a need. The ironic part of humanity is that we're not regularly that way every single day. We have the capacity. We just don't fulfill our capacity on a sufficiently regular basis to do more on a regular basis. Now, some might say, well, why now? What's going on now that I would say do more Jewish or do more Christian? What's going on now? If you study world history, you know that whenever there are great stressors on populations, populations seek causes. And the causes they seek are rooted in the H word against minorities. I'll give you a perfect example, and it compares perfectly to COVID. The bubonic plague. Who did they blame for the bubonic plague? The Jews. What were the Jews doing? We were poisoning the water wells of the Christians. Little did they note that Jews were dying at the same rate as Christians. So if the Jews created the bubonic plague, don't you think we would have been smart enough to shelter ourselves so we don't get it? Of course not. Fast forward to COVID. Either you have that the Jews created COVID in their secret laboratories, or we came up with the inoculations for it so we get wealthy off of the tragedy of COVID. Well, which one was it? Did we cause it or did we cure it? I don't know which one it was. Anytime within the world history when there are powerful stress events, the Jews are the ones that are blamed. They are the scapegoats. Look at Germany post-World War I. The Jews were blamed because Germany lost World War I, ignoring the fact that how many Jews fought in the German army in World War I and were veterans. And yet Jewish veterans were put to death like any other Jewish group within Germany during World War II. So if you look at the flow and ebb of history, you see whenever there are powerful stress events in the world, the Jews get blamed. But it only starts with the Jewish community. It doesn't end there. Because people who have a tendency to blame another group for their own misfortune don't end with just the Jews. It migrates from the Jews when they see the world doesn't care. Let's find another group to pick on, and then another, and then another. You may have heard it written and spoken of a lot in the past few years. The Jewish people are the canary in the coal mine. What that means, for those of you unfamiliar with mining, is canaries were put in coal mines because the birds would regularly sing. When they stop singing, it's because they're dead. Why are they dead? Either because there's no oxygen there, or methane gas escaped into the mine, and the miners better get out. We are the canary in the coal mine of the United States. When you begin by attacking the Jews, it doesn't end with attacking the Jews. It migrates to other minority groups. We're just the first one because we're small. It then moves on to another group and another and another. So what we see in America right now is, as Alan Simpson, former senator, said it so beautifully at the funeral of George H.W. Bush. The H word is rotting the core of America. Rotting the core of America. That's why we need to do more Christian. Christians are the majority faith in the United States. It's really in the hands of the Christians in America to say, are we going to put up with all of this? Or are we going to show everyone else. No, this is not being Christian. Then what does it mean to be Christian? So you see, the Jews are not the ones to fix anti-Semitism because we didn't cause it. You don't blame the victim for their victimhood. It's everyone else who's caused it. So what are you going to do to fix it? How are you going to be more Christian so that we can look proudly and say, this is the America we can be proud of? That's my challenge. Marlene.
Of course, you know I have to say something.
Nah.
I'm going to pick up on what she said about knowing the other. And just because Calvary was so welcoming to us,
Marlene? For everybody watching online, you have good stuff to say.
well, I'll stand up maybe. I just wanted to pick up on what Rabbi said about knowing the other. And Calvary has been so welcoming to Tree of Life that these little groups have formed now because people know each other. Our congregants have this Mosh Club with the Calvary now. Some of us came and volunteered for your White Elephant Sale, the bazaar, which is, I mean, we know people by name. And I think that was, if that shooter had known Jews, I don't think he knew anybody who was Jewish. I don't know that much about him. But I think on a one-to-one basis, and there probably wouldn't be any wars either if we knew the people we were fighting against by name. You know, it's governments or masses. I think people get lumped together. And that's how I feel. I think, I mean, we can't thank Calvary enough for offering us their sanctuary, where I was graduated many years ago, for our high holiday services. So I think getting to know people face to face is a very important thing.
Thank you, Marlene,
Thank you,
for listening to when I've given sermons about that. I live 6 blocks from Fred Rogers' house in Squirrel Hill. And he made it abundantly clear that we need to know our neighbors. We don't know our neighbors. We live in silos. In that silo are people who are just like us. If you're not just like the other people, you're not in that silo. And there are no bridges to connect those silos, despite the fact that Pittsburgh has, 425 bridges. The 26th bridge is being rebuilt. It'll open soon enough. We don't know our neighbors. And when we don't know our neighbors, we don't understand them. Misunderstanding is just the beginning of a negative trajectory that leads to fear and loathing and eventually the H word. And then, as Rabbi Yoda said so famously, you are now on the dark side. So we need to know our neighbors. So here's my dream, not in a vast Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Sort of way, that when Tree of Life reopens, what I'd like to see is that with the cooperation of various religious educators, that we create a curriculum, say 6 or 8 weeks curriculum, that can be tested in a number of houses of worship in the greater Pittsburgh area. And it would be world religions. Each session would last maybe an hour and a half. That one week you'd learn about one faith, the next week you'd learn about another faith, and then another faith. And after learning about the faith and talking with people, an opportunity to visit those houses of worship to get to know your neighbors. Because when you know your neighbor, not in just the next door sense, but in those who live in the area with you, you're going to be able to understand them a little better and not just merely tolerate. Because, you know, frankly, I think we're beyond tolerance. Tolerance is insufficient. We need to appreciate. We need to respect. We need to be able to enjoy who our neighbors are. When we do that, we've then, as it does in Proverbs, we walked a mile in their shoes. We get them better. And then we can see, wow, we have so much in common. America's not at a place where we recognize commonality. America's in a place where all we focus on are differences. Think about it for a moment. Is there anyone here who does not want a roof over their heads? Of course not. Anybody who doesn't want food on the table? Anybody who doesn't want warm clothing? Anybody who doesn't want good health care? As you compile that list, you discover we all want the same things. So if we can work together on the same things to see that everybody can have equal access to the same things, the list of what makes us different gets really short. And then we can work on those. But let's start from a place of commonality. We're not doing that. We're starting from a place of difference. And when you start from a place of difference, you've already put barriers between your relationship. If you start from a place of commonality, you then have a hand across the table. Think for just a moment, you said it perfectly. Think for just a moment, the 23rd Psalm. You set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. The psalm is telling us to sit down and break bread with your enemy. Don't go out for a cup of coffee with your friends. You do that all the time. How hard is it to sit down and break bread with your enemy? Really hard. But when you sit down and break bread with your enemy, you discover, wow, we're more alike than we recognize. That's the power of that one line in the 23rd Psalm, which is totally unlike any other line in the Psalm. So that's the challenge, to be able to sit down with someone that's not the same as you and to discover, wow, we are far more alike than we are different. Yeah? Please. Exactly.
Could you repeat that?
So the comment was made about meeting the needs of people only when there's dire need, and that we need to do more to focus not merely on the dire need moments, but on the regular need moments. The way to do that is by being in conversation with people, to get to know people, to be able to appreciate what their needs are. Think about it how and my good friend Pastor Eric Manning of Mother Emanuel Church in Charleston said the following. First off, we need to change the phrase peace on earth, goodwill towards men to peace on earth, goodwill towards all. But then he raised the question in a program we were taping, why is it only this time of year there's peace on earth, goodwill towards all? Shouldn't that be the mantra every single day of your life? But it's not. It's only during the Christmas season. That's a failure to have that only one time of year. Or all the groups that gather and have Christmas toys for children. That's beautiful. Why is it only on Christmas that there are toys? Do children not need toys other days of the year, but it's only one day or one season that they deserve to get toys, or people deserve to get a good meal? Shouldn't that be the way every single day? We have to change our thinking to recognize the need is great every single day. We haven't done our utmost until there is not one child in this country who goes hungry. If there's one child that goes hungry, then we're not doing our best to solve childhood hunger. There should be no children that go hungry. We have the capacity to do that in the United States. All we lack is the will to be able to solve that. We could fix homelessness if we really wanted to. We just don't want to. We can figure it out. I think we have enough smart people in this country who can figure that out. You would think if we can put stuff into space, we can figure out how to help people and to elevate them to be able to reach a place where they feel self-respect, that they can have a job, that they can have a place to live, that their children aren't hungry. We just lack the willpower to do it. Yes?
Hold up. Phil Donahue's coming by.
I think there's so much negative talk about what's going on in the church today. Lack of attendance, lack of faith, pastoral burnout. And I think what you and Jonathan are doing is such a bit of good news that we should be talking about it more. And we're so delighted to have you here. And I'm a great fan of yours, by the way. And we're so glad to have you here. And I think we should talk. This is good news for the church.
Thank you. So the comment was that there's so much negative being spoken of, and that you appreciate the positive just doing this sort of program. Just to let you know, the problems in the church don't exist only in the church. Every faith has problems with attendance post-COVID, where more and more people feel not comfortable yet coming because of COVID. People find it easier to be able to stay at home. They don't have to get dressed. They don't even have to turn on their camera. They could just lay in bed and watch a service for any faith. So the good news is it didn't just happen to the church. It happened to all the synagogues, all the mosques, all the Sikh temples, the same problems. It's an American phenomena when it comes to reduced numbers of attendance, conflicts. It's an American problem. It's not merely a church problem. That doesn't necessarily mean, oh, thank goodness, we thought it was just the church. But what it does mean is better opportunity for people of different faiths, be they clergy or lay, to be able to sit and talk about these, and I think collectively come up with creative solutions to be able to move forward. I mean, as I said to my congregants, on our holiest days of the year, I respect the fact that if you're not comfortable coming to synagogue on Yom Kippur, our holiest day of the year, okay, you're not ready yet because of COVID. I understand that. That's why we're live streaming. But here's what you need to do. You can't lay in bed in your pajamas with the monitor off, with a laptop on your belly and think that now I'm ready to celebrate the holiest day of the year. You need to wear what you would be wearing to synagogue. You need to find a prayer space in your home that's a respectful place, that doesn't look like a whirlwind just came through it. You need to have the prayer book, which you make readily available to you. And you need to be engaged in prayer to make it a meaningful experience for you. So if you're not willing to meet me part way and are just going to lay in your bed in your pajamas and have your cup of coffee there and your laptop on your belly, I can't help you get moved further if you're not willing to say, this is important to me and I'm going to do my best to get to that point. So the good news is it's an American problem. So it's an American problem. We need to gather together to solve the problems. But you're right. By talking together, that's the solution. That's easy. It's easy to do.
Over here.
You had mentioned, and I hope we all agree, that we are much better at handling community needs on a holiday or during a crisis. But it's an uphill climb to do it every day for everybody, because there is not the H word, but the S word, socialism. How do we climb that hill when we try to help everybody every day and are accused of being un-American because that's socialism?
The answer is the more they name call, do more, Christian. That's the answer. Do even more. They're entitled to their opinion. Opinions are just opinions. They're not right and they're not wrong. It's merely an opinion. And that's that person's opinion. Fine. You continue on the path you want with whatever things you need to name call and say, because name calling never solves anything. If anything, we learn Within Judaism, we teach that the most powerful weapon in the world are words. Words can wound, and words can kill. So it's just like the answer I give my congregants. Do more, Christian. The more people will complain, do even more. The more they complain, do even more. Keep it going. Just keep it going. Because in the end, the foundational elements of what makes Christianity are about goodness. As long as you keep doing goodness, goodness will rule the day. I know it from personal experience, from the cards, letters, emails that continue 4 years later, which remind me that the vast majority of the people on this planet are good people who reject the evil of that day. So despite any naysayers, which is really easy to just get you down and say, I just can't keep fighting this anymore, to know you're not alone. The vast majority of humanity rejects that behavior. We are just too silent on it. We need to be a vocal majority of goodness to be able to wash away all the evil, as Martin Luther King would regularly quote Micah, to be able to wash it away in a stream of goodness. When there's enough of that stream, we will wash it away. So you're not alone, but we have to just keep plugging away and plugging away.
Also, Steve, in my experience as rector for 9 years, if I'm not being called a few names at a time on a regular basis, I don't think I'm doing my job very well. Because somebody, and it should be for the right reasons, of course, but somebody should be upset if we're carving out of space of what it means to love and serve our neighbors. I'm not even sure Jeff knows this yet, but one of his congregants called me last week, and when after the shooting, lots and lots of people around the country and in the world created art. We've seen some of it before here, even at Calvary. And Dave Calla called me. It's being 40 mosaics, sharing people's feelings, response to the shooting. We'd like to have it here at Calvary. I was asked we'd like to have it here at Calvary next September, October, November. That is on the 5-year anniversary. We will, I said, you don't have to say any more, but I'd love to know the story. The answer is, of course. We would love to host that. And at the same time, there's something called the Violins of Hope, which is, long story short, violins played by Jews during the Holocaust that these instruments survived. They've since been restored. It was a handful. Now there are 40 or more, and they're going in different places around the world. And it's a way to tell the story of the people, the Jews as well as the individuals, of what they experienced and about the story of what it means to be human and to be a Jew within that, as well as telling the story through music. That is coming to Pittsburgh next September.
Yes, September, October.
September, October 2023. All the arts organizations, all the universities, a lot of civic organizations. And last I checked, there are 3 religious groups participating. East Liberty Presbyterian, the Roman Catholic Diocese of Pittsburgh, and Calvary. And so we will host most likely a concert, relationship with schools, while that art show over 3 months is going on. That's just what we do. And are we saving everybody all the time? No, of course not. You can't save the world. We believe God does that. But this happened to be the relationships that developed over time that we're continuing to cultivate and to build upon to help do our part to do more Christian so Jeff and his congregation can do more Jewish in a safe way. Marcia.
Hello. So I hear both of you, do more Jewish, do more Christian. So it's your position that by doing more goodness, mitzvah, we can hope that that will trickle down to this increasing fringe element of society that is so full of hate.
So the
Do you understand what I'm asking?
Yeah, so the remark question is by doing more Jewish, by doing more Christian, that'll trickle down to what you call this, the fringe element that represents the H word in society. Yes. And you said the perfect words, fringe. The metaphor I like to use is the squeaky wheel. The squeaky wheel came about as a symbol referring to wooden wagons, 4 wheels. It was inevitable one of them would squeak. And as we all know, the squeaky wheel is the one that gets the attention. I've expanded that and modernized it to a different version of squeaky wheel. Imagine an 18-wheeler, giant truck. It has one squeaky wheel. Why should that one wheel get the attention from being noisy when the other 17 are doing perfectly fine the job they're supposed to do? So it's not 25% of our society, it's 1 out of 18 is a better way to view it. We need to give more attention to the 17 good wheels that are just doing the job they're supposed to be doing and not squeaking away. So the way to minimize the fringe, as you refer to, is by doing more good, because that will drown out all of the negative. It doesn't happen as an overnight phenomena. It happens continually over a period of time till those people who are the minority in our country aren't heard because they're drowned out by the good. But think of it as they're bullies. The natural tendency for us as human beings with bullies is to just shy away, be quiet, be non-confrontational. That's what we normally do with bullies. When you call out a bully and you have a majority of people who are good, a bully will eventually go away. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a consistency over time so that bullies will be quieted down. So the way to quiet down a bully is not by a physical act per se, but merely speaking up and saying, no, not in America, not now, not ever, not know-how. That's what we need to do regularly. And that's why I say by doing more Christian, that's how you silence the bullies who are anti-Christian. Because if they're going to behave in that way, that's being anti-Christian. And it doesn't matter what you refer to as what's the foundational piece. When you behave in a way that harms other people, you're being anti-Christian. That's easy. That's simple. And that's what it's about.
I would offer, in addition to that, a slightly different way to look at it, is it does silence the fringe, disarm them, so to speak. But part of what we're doing together, and also with Rabbi Bisno, is this generous way of being Christians, being Jewish, lets other people know there's a way to do this, to encourage, to inspire. Like, this is where we planted the flag. This is what we're doing at Calvary Church. I want to do that too. Because people just need to see that there can be a relationship where we like and respect each other. We're not secretly thinking, oh gosh, Jeff is a Mets fan. I hate to tell everybody that.
Actually, I'm a Yankees fan.
Yankees fan, but he's a really good guy except for that. It's not that stuff. He's just a good person, and we like each other. And there are differences, but there's a whole lot in common. And letting other good people, that is, those who see broadly this Jewish and Christian vision, and other people of faith, I can do that too. And to speak up against it, to act up against it, but not so much against things. This is what we're for. This is the unifying message. I am for preaching about God. I am for loving and serving our neighbors. I'm for things like education for all and equal access and so on. That's what we do to silence the fringe, and then for the vast majority to say, live out your faith more deeply. Do more Christian. Do more Jewish. Do more Muslim. We've got about 6 minutes. I've got to run. Elise had her hand up, and I'll run over there.
Things real quick. I think this relationship with Tree of Life is wonderful. I'm a member here. And I've told a number of people outside this congregation that, well, I have a rabbi now. And then I tell them about it, and they're surprised. even people who are pretty good about these things, they're surprised and they're interested that that's going on. But I guess there isn't time to discuss this, but I'm wondering if you personally have known individuals or groups that you saw becoming less anti-Semitic. And how do you think that happened? Like, have you seen it, or can we just kind of hope that it's happening? Have you personally seen people change?
Yes, I've seen people change, which is the fuel that encourages me to continue to do more.
Last one.
Jeffrey, I was wondering, because other than reading the Old Testament and having Jewish friends, I don't really know, when you say, what are the basis of your religion? Would you ever think of teaching a class here, albeit a short one, that would at least give some foundation for us to have an understanding of Jewish, what it means to be Jewish?
What a great question is, what does it mean to be Jewish foundational? So I have a great suggestion. You've got a house rabbi. So I'm going to respectfully...
As it turns out, we are doing exactly that. It's called Back to the Sources, and Aaron Bisno is teaching that on Wednesday. We have a service at noon, and then 12:30, it's an hour and a half. I went to the first one intending to stay about 5 minutes, make sure everybody had something. I stayed the whole time. It was tremendous. A couple people in here I see are in that class. I realize if you work during the day, you can't go, but we're going to try to offer it again. It's been a big hit, but it's learning more than just, I joked, I said, what is that Rosh Hanukkah thing anyway, to Aaron? Because a lot of people don't, generally speaking, a Jew would know more about Christianity than a Christian might know about Judaism, because Christianity has been the dominant or the largest religion. But to learn not just the broad strokes, but where does this come from and what does it mean and the why of it, the beauty of it, that's what Aaron's teaching, but we will certainly offer it again in a different way. And I'm not going to announce this without Aaron, but he and I are planning a big thing together to invite all of you, but probably next, like January through June, that we would talk about just what you're asking and the common early life from 2,000 years ago, well, Judaism being older, and then Christianity, where do they come from? So it's already going on, and we'll do more.
To give you a snippet, I don't have the date yet. I'm giving a one-session class on the real story of Hanukkah. Where did Hanukkah really come from? So I'm going to be giving that. Once I've finalized the date and so forth, I'll share that with your rector. So for those who might want to know more about where did Hanukkah come from, that you're most warmly welcome to join. It'll be live streamed as well.
Final thing, to model Jewish-Christian relations, but more friendships across barriers. December 18th, and I've said this to so many people, and no one really, wow. December 18th, we have a Christmas pageant. Christmas pageant is an acted-out, campy way of telling the story of the birth of Jesus. That is at 11 o'clock with a camel. What do you mean? I mean a full-size camel that's bigger than a horse, and sheep and goats and a donkey, and they come down the aisle, and we have little kids, and it's terribly cute. And I wrote Moses into the Christmas pageant, played by Rabbi Jeff Myers, born to the role. He has his own kit of Moses outfit, 10 Commandments. They're styrofoam, but they're easier to lug than stone, of course. He'll be reprising that role. Our Ethiopian community participates in that. And following that, December 18th, that night is the beginning of Hanukkah. And we will have a Hanukkah party with latkes and learn music and some of the story. I don't know of a better way to model the friendship and the relationship than living out our faith together in a way where they're not trying to convert us, we're not trying to convert them, we're trying to convert each person more deeply to the faith. Do more Jewish, do more Christian. May we thank Jeff Myers for being here.
Thank you.